Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are Living Fit, your trainer's trainer. We not only have education courses for trainers to upgrade their game, but we have full on follow along programs, workouts, exercise breakdowns, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for you to reach your fitness goals. Now, enjoy the show. What's up, guys? Aaron Guyette, master coach of Battle Ropes and the education director here at Living Fit. And I have the incredible honor and pleasure to have David Keohan on the Living Fit Show today. So, David Keohan, we were arguing about, did we actually touch hands and shake hands, say hello or not? But we both lifted at the World Championship for Kettlebell sport way back in the day, 2015. And he's been following me for 8 years, and I've been following him back. And now we finally get the great pleasure and honor to meet up and chat about life. And man, I'm super pumped to have you. Oh, by the way, now he lifts stones that are 5 times the weight and size of a regular human. But he does some stone lifting, which, David, I just wanted to say really quick on the front end, typically you see the opposite, right? And we were kind of talking about that a little bit with Brian Keene, who I've interviewed before, but where like, as you get later in your years, the lifting amounts go down and then the endurance stuff goes up, but you have decided to flip that all on its ear. How in the heck did you get into this? And
well, I mean, like you said at the start, I mean, kettlebells were my thing for, and they still are, for about 10 years now, Aaron. And it's something I've loved doing. I've loved doing for a long time. But it's just, remember with the COVID lockdowns, I mean, we were stuck in a very, very harsh lockdown here. I don't know what it was like in the States, but we had probably the most stringent lockdown in the world in Ireland that we couldn't move outside our house.
Idaho, not so much. California, pretty stringent.
Okay, but we were literally within a 5K lockdown. We couldn't leave the house, so all the gyms were shut. Most of the shops were shut. So all I had to train with was a couple of rocks out in my back garden and a couple of heavy kettlebells. Because like I went to the same gym for 8 years, and they had all the gear, all the kettlebells, all the stuff I needed for training. So I didn't need to buy anything.
And then ordering a kettlebell during that time was like,
and like it was going to cost you an absolute fortune. Like remortgage the house to get a pair of bells, So, so I was like, I met my wife in our college, and she had this beautiful stone carving up the back, which I weighed at 60 kilos. I was like, oh, that's an interesting weight.
Yeah.
So I started just training with that, picking it up and doing squats and, just bringing it up the shoulder and stuff. And I got 60 kilos.
Just so everybody knows, that's like an average female weight.
Right? Yeah. 60 kilos, about 130 something pounds.
Yeah.
Or roughly.
Well, so, I shouldn't say average. I don't know. I'll probably offend people.
Well, let's just say it's a decent weight. It's a decent weight. I just got into the stone lifting through that, and it was just through necessity, really, more than anything else. But then it just started to take a hold of me. I really started to enjoy the feeling of it, And then we got to the stage where friends of mine were dropping me out stones out to the house. They were like, Dave, I'm after digging up a big hole in the back garden. I'm after finding a nice big boulder. Do you want to train with us? See, I'm training with rocks. So the guys bringing out rocks in the back of their van. My house is just covered in rocks at the back garden. And now I'm looking at it. But it was just in training with these and weighing them and gradually getting better. And then getting into the whole watching, Rogue made a documentary called Stoneland, which I don't know if you've seen. If you haven't, please watch it. It's fantastic. It's got probably about 20 million views on it now.
Who made it?
Rogue Fitness. Okay. Yeah. So it was all about Scotland and the stone lifting tradition over there. And the like that you had manhood stones and you had clan testing stones. So every clan or every valley had its own testing stone for, like, say, a youth to become a man or a man to become like a warrior. So these stones were lifted as a trial of strength. So I was like, oh, that sounds fantastic. So I trained really hard on stone lifting for about 18 months. And I went to Scotland last year and lifted 14 of those stones in 2 days on a tour of Scotland.
So 14
and became a member of about 8 different clans and about 2 different warrior castes and stuff. Nice. So it was pretty awesome. And the stones range from anything from, say, like 100 kilos up to about 140 to 160 kilos. So it's a fair size weight, When you think about it in terms of weight, it's actually not a lot of weight. I mean, I could probably deadlift that with one hand, but
But you have
when you get to an actual, that's it, but it's got a handle on it. A barbell wants to be lifted, whereas a stone doesn't. It's part of the earth and it's quite happy there. So, and the way I can describe it to people is during the Arnold festivals, you'd have like guys lifting 400 kilo deadlifts and plus more than that, maybe 450.
Yeah.
But they're lifting a 180 kilo stone.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's less than half of what they're lifting in a deadlift, and they're finding it very, very difficult. Some can't pick it up at all. So you're like, it is difficult. It's a tough skill. You need to have a quite good level of mobility and strength. So I'm really enjoying the challenge of it, man. Really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. We had at the gym that I owned back in the day, we had the actual cast stones that are
the stones,
or whatever that you'll see in the strongman competitions.
Yes.
And it was like my favorite thing to lift the heavy one and then to pick the biggest guy in the gym and have him not lift it. I'm like, it's like the big bodybuilder guy that's like outweighs me by 60 pounds, 20 something kilos or whatever. He goes over there, can't do it. I'm like,
man.
Lift it up. Like, what's up, son?
Did you like that?
Yeah.
But no, I love it. I'm really loving it. And I'm loving more the history of it really much than anything else. I mean, the history behind these things. I mean, you're lifting stones that were lifted maybe 1,000 years ago by a guy wanting to become like a Fianna warrior or, one of the warrior castes. And like, how many lives have been and gone since then, and how many people have lifted that thing or touched that stone and tried to lift it. So you're actually physically in touch with history, which I really think is awesome. And I'm going over to Iceland now at the end of the year. I'm going to do the Viking stones. And I'm actually starting to dig out old Irish lifting stones that were forgotten about and trying to bring that history back into the future over here, into the modern times. So I found 2 or 3 here already in Ireland, and I'm really starting to kind of unearth a strength culture that was kind of lost. So it's just great fun. It's great fun, and you're actually doing something for Irish strength history going forward,
Yeah, that is so. Man, that I got to stop you for a second there. That metaphorical and literal language is so cool. You're unearthing the stones that were lifted in history, but in that process, you're unearthing history.
Exactly.
Wow, that is a fantastic picture. Yeah,
it's incredible, and it's this whole lost culture that was here. It was very, very prevalent, and I've just been like going through old library and old maps, and I found a great one there in the Aran Islands only about 3 months ago. One called the Moulin Port Vale on Doon, it's called, which is from a thing called Dún Aengus, which is like Dún Aengus is the oldest fort in Europe, and one of the oldest forts in the world. It's from like 1000 BC.
Wow.
And right underneath that, there was this lifting stone that was probably used all the way back, since the dawn of time or the ancestral ages of men, as a strength test. And it's 171 kilos. And through old stories and myths and legends, I managed to find this thing, and get it on the map. And people have now come from all over the world to come lift it. And it's just great to be doing this kind of stuff, And like I said, digging up the past and bringing it into the modern times. I'm just loving it. I'm just loving the whole vibe of it.
That is, I gotta pause and put a bookmark there because I want to come back to that, specifically talking about rites of passage and things like that.
Yes.
But before I do that, I want to rewind a little bit and unearth a little bit of your past, so to speak. And I kind of put 2 questions together, and then we got into the stone lifting, which is beautiful. So how did you get into fitness? Because obviously you weren't a kettlebell sport. You came into kettlebell sport late, right? Quote unquote late, at least compared to a Russian, right? Or an Eastern Bloc country or European country or whatever.
That's true. That's true.
Because they're like just born with them, they come out.
Yeah, they're just giving them when they're like 4 years old, and here you go, eat your dinner and go lift some bells for 2 or 3 hours and come back in then.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the great pleasure of getting to know a lot of these like world champion lifters and becoming friends with them or whatever. But they really do live and breathe that sport.
They do.
But you came into it late, but you also put some incredible numbers up. How did you get into fitness? Was it into kettlebell sport that brought you into fitness, or was it something else and then you went to kettlebell sport? Or how did that work?
It's actually a great question because I started fitness of any kind very late. I mean, I'm celebrating my 10 years in fitness this year, and I'm going to be 43 this year. So at the age of 32, I was like 16 stone. Very, very overweight, well over 200 pounds, 230 pounds roughly. Very overweight, very unfit, very unhealthy. I was more into music and art. And I went to art college. That's where I met my wife, playing in bands, drinking, smoking, and everything else that goes with it for about 15 years. And it was starting to catch up on me. I was 32, I was overweight, I had young kids, and things were starting to go downhill. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you're going to have to be on X, Y, and Z medication for the rest of your life. Blood pressure, asthmatic inhalers, all kinds of stuff for reflex in your stomach, just because of poor diet and poor lifestyle. So I decided I didn't want to do that. So I said, I'm going to try and get fit and see what that'll do. So the next day I went out and I bought a pair of runners or sneakers and put them on and started running. And I went out at 6 o'clock in the morning and started running. Got about 150 yards and had to turn around and come home because I was so unfit. I couldn't run up the hill in my estate. I couldn't get out my housing estate. But I went out every day for about a month and gradually got that up to 5K. My blood pressure was starting to come down. My weight was starting to come down. My acid reflux was gone. I was eating better. And 6 months later, I ran my first marathon. And that was a pretty awesome achievement to go from not being able to run 100 yards, 150 yards to running a marathon in 6 months. And from that, it was like an epiphany. It was like a light switch went off in my head. I was like, okay, what else can you do? What else can you do now? I mean, you're 32, 33 almost at that stage. You've ran a marathon from being an absolute slob. So what else can you do? So I got into a kettlebell fitness class through a chance meeting in work with a gym owner, and we got into kettlebell fitness for about 4 or 5 months, and then I saw there was a kettlebell sport team there, which I was fascinated by. I mean, I was watching these guys lifting these 224s, in jerk sets, going, like, that's incredible. How are they doing that? I'm here with a 20 kilo swings and thinking I'm great. And then you're watching these guys banging up 224 kilo kettlebells for reps, maybe 15, 20 RPM in jerk. And you're like, that's incredible. I want to get in on that. Yeah. And I did at the end of 2012. And I got obsessed. I got absolutely 100% hooked on everything to do with kettlebell sport, technique, and trying to be as efficient as possible. So I messaged everybody. I absolutely messaged and videoed everybody. All the Russians, Ukrainians, Kazakhstan, a couple of guys in America, a couple of guys in Britain. And I just hounded everybody for technique tips and little things. Went to many, many workshops and got obsessed with the process. And I think through that, really refining and kind of honing the technique, I kind of had, I hesitate to say meteoric rise through kettlebell sport, but I went from being like lifting 216s for 5 minutes at the end of 2012 to lifting in the Europeans in 2014 and winning the Europeans in Russia in 2014 on 224s. And from there, then going and winning the World Championships.
I got to stop you there. So you beat Russians at their sport?
Yeah, I think now in Russia, I nearly think the 224s are almost felt like a warm-up weight,
Well,
they're all 32s or nothing.
Or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's like, you guys are okay, fair play. But I mean, it was a great achievement for me, to go from like 2.5 years from not being able to run like 100 yards to suddenly becoming a European champion at an amateur level in a sport was a pretty awesome couple of years. And just goes to show how much work I put in there. It's pretty much every day. And like constantly kind of refining the craft and putting in a lot of hard yards, Yeah. But it was great, So from there, then I went on to win the World Championships in 2015 on the 224s, which was a fantastic thing to do, to stand up with your national flag and say you're a world champion is amazing.
In your country, no less.
In my country. Yeah. Like, it doesn't get better. My dad was there, like my kids were there,
Yeah.
It's one of those moments I have like a photograph it on my wall and I'm never going to take that down. So that was a pretty special thing to do.
Yeah.
And then I went on to professional level. I moved up that following year. I went to Kazakhstan and lifted professionally over there, lasting 10 minutes on 32s, got Master of Sports the following year. Went to marathon, got Master of Sports in marathon then on 220s long cycle. That's 250 reps in 30 minutes. That was a great achievement to do as well. And got a world record then the year after. And after that, then it was pretty much right. I've done everything I wanted to do with kettlebell sports. It's been a pretty quick, short, sharp couple of years. But I set myself out goals at the start, Aaron, and I said, what did you want to do? Like, what's your short, medium, and long-term goal?
Yeah.
So your short-term goal was I wanted to get on the Irish team. Medium-term goal was I wanted to win a championship. And long-term goal was become a Master of Sports and hopefully set a world record in something in the way. And I managed to do all of that in about 6 or 7 years. And after that, then I kind of gracefully bowed out and then went to something else. But it was an amazing few years and something I'll never forget. It changed my life for the better. I met some fantastic people. I traveled the world, and I'm still traveling the world teaching it now. I've gone all over the world before COVID, and I was back in Britain teaching and coaching the last twice this year already. So it's been an amazing thing to happen in my life. Considering
are you teaching kettlebell sport?
Yeah, I'm teaching kettlebell sport and I'm teaching mobility for the sport.
Nice.
I came up with the kettle yoga program for mobility, just because what I was noticing in most of the lifting championships was generally with the guys with the two bells, their mobility was shocking. It was very, very bad. And it was limiting their numbers and was making their...
That's me.
Well, no.
My mobility was trash.
It was just even for people to have a think about it. If you do this and if you can be more efficient, lifting will get better. Mm-hmm. And it was just showing people that it's basically that's what it is. Efficiency is the key with kettlebell sport. And a lot of time, efficiency is down to be able to stack your joints a bit better. And how do you do that? Working your mobility. How do you do that? Here, try this. So it's worked out great. I've gone all over the world, to Australia, all over Scandinavia and Europe, teaching this and teaching kettlebell sport along the way, especially long cycle, because that's my love. So it's been an amazing couple of years, man. It really has.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's freaking awesome. I love that. And the thing is, I've bantered with a few kettlebell sport guys that I lived with in the past, and then a few that I've met after. I got master of sport in all three lifts in one competition, and that for me was like where I hung my hat. Right, I was like, okay,
it doesn't get much better than that.
I'm like, I'll call that good. And my shoulder, of course, was just trash that whole year while I was competing, and that was actually 2015.
Yeah, awesome.
And I thought, and I've bantered, and I'm like, man, if I do get back into it, the first and primary thing I'm going to focus on is mobility. If I do get back into it, I'm going to hit you up.
Yeah,
I need the program. I need it.
No problem at all, man. I'm here for you.
Yeah,
I'm here for you. 100%. That's in the logic.
So like I said, I wanted to shift back to the stone lifting. I am infatuated with how poorly we have done as a society to create rites of passage. And a lot of people think rites is like, oh, it's my right to do this. No, it means ritual, right? It's a ritual of passage usually it's like into adulthood or into being a warrior, something like that in the past. And so you were talking about, it was, it's not just a feat of strength, it's a test of strength.
Exactly.
To become an adult, a man, right? Or a warrior. And so is that just a piece of the greater rite of passage, or is that the thing? Like, how does that, if right, how does that lay out?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's a couple of them now, if you don't mind me telling you a couple of stories.
That's what I'm here for.
Well, in Scotland, a lot of the glens in Scotland, I hope I'm saying this correctly, some of them would just have the test of strength, but that would be lift, say it's maybe 100 kilo stone onto a plinth, maybe a chest high plinth, and to be able to have the strength to do that, which you would become a man. But some of the warrior ones are fantastic, because I was brought up with something called the Fina, and the Fina were old Irish or Celtic warrior caste. Maybe about 1,000 years ago, and we were brought up on stories in this as kids in school. Fionn McCool was the head man of the Fina, and we were brought up in front of the Fionn McCool sagas in school. So I heard then there was a stone called the Fina stone in Glenlyon in Scotland, and I was like, are you serious? There's an actual stone called the Fina stone, which Fionn McCool and his friends were lifting. Like, this is like mythology and legend and history and everything all coming together in modern times. It was like, it's like saying someone in Norway, look, there's Thor's hammer in the field, go out and lift it. We're finding that this legend of Irish history, so this thing is suddenly there. So it's like, I have to go lift this thing. I have to go lift it. So to become a Fina warrior, you had to lift this stone to chest height and put it on a plinth. The stone is 127 kilos. So it's a fair size weight for a stone. That was one of the tests. One of the other test was you had to jump the length of your kilt, which was 8 to 10 feet long. So a broad jump, so just a standing jump over the length of your kilt, which is about 10 feet. And then you had to run at full pace over a sword held at chest height without breaking stride. So that was 3 of the tests. There was many, many others, but they're kind of the 3 famous ones. And that was to become a Fina warrior. And Fina warriors were very well respected back in the day. Great warriors, also great poets, musicians. So I was like, I have to do the Fina test. I have to go and do it. See, can I do it? So at the age of 42 last year, I went over and I picked up the stone. I done the broad jump and ran under a stick. I would go run under a sword. But it was just amazing to think that my ancestors, my ancient ancestors, were doing this like 1,000 years ago. And now I've done it. It was like you're in touch with history. You're physically in touch with the past. You're not just reading about it in a book. You're actually picking up the thing that those guys.
The incredible part of that is it's modernity and an individual meets, like you said, it's not just history and all of these men that, warrior men that are highly respected that had to pass this, but it's like legend and mythology. It's like all wrapped up into the present.
It was incredible. It was actually so incredible. A friend of mine made me a little sculpture. Like, I went to art college. He made me a little sculpture about it because he was there. We went over together in a camper van. And he was like, that was just one of the coolest things I've ever seen. He said, that was just amazing, to pick this thing up and to know, because he tried it, he couldn't do it, but it's like, he's not a strength athlete. But he's like, it's just amazing to see that. He said, that was just a really, really cool part of Irish history. So I was like, yeah, that was awesome. And that was one of the ones in Scotland. And there's a great one in Iceland as well, whereas you had the Drittvik stones, which I'm going over to try. So the Drittvik stones were like old fisherman stones. So whatever stone you lifted designated how much of a share of the catch that you got on a boat, right? So you had a stone which was called the weakling stone, which was 65 kilos. So that would only mean a small share. Then you had the half strong, or call it half sturker. So the half sturker stone was 100 kilos. Then you got a half a share. Or you had the full sturker, which was full strong, and a full sturker was 152 kilos. And if you could lift that, you were getting a full share. So your how you fed your family or how you earned your livelihood was based on your strength. That was it. It was pretty much, that's it. So
wow.
That's pretty awesome to go over and see, could you try and do those as well? Like, would you be a half strong or a full strong? Yeah. So I'm going over to try those at the end of the year. But it was amazing that back in the olden times, your worth was your strength. Your strength was your worth. So we've lost a little bit of that. Now I think nowadays, I mean, I know that's pretty basic. It's pretty cut and dry. We all have worked in different ways, but that was just in these tougher landscapes. That was how you were designated a man, or how you were designated a good husband, or a good provider, by your strength.
Well, I mean, it does. I mean, if there's not something that can transport you back to how severe nature survival providing can be, and also juxtapose that with the present, how convenient and comfortable our lives have become, since then. It's like, and again, like you said, not to say anything against some of the capacities and creative abilities and cognitive abilities of people that might not have strength or whatever, but have an incredible offering and value to society. But man, I mean, like that's about as real as it gets right there.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have the strength, like, well, what are you going to be able to do? Like, we need to eat in order to live through the winter.
Exactly. I mean, like, again, there's a Rogue made three documentaries, one called Stoneland, one called Full Sturker about Iceland, and one called the Levantadores, I think it's called, about the Basque stone lifters in Spain. And these guys were saying the same thing. They were like, we were living on the land. We had to build a house. So we had to go to the mountains, chop trees and bring them back, build a house with trees, with stone that we had to dig out of the ground ourselves. I mean, you had to be strong. A weak man wasn't going to be able to do that. And then you had to go out and into the farm. You had to, bale hay. You had to cut grass. You had to be fit and you had to be strong. And that was your worth. So they trained that. Yeah. And they're still doing those lifts now based on the old, on that old training. Lots of log training, lots of stone lifting. And they're still doing that in Spain. So I'm going to try it over there and again now next year and do a bit with those guys. But those three documentaries really kind of opened my eyes to that form of lifting and that way of living and that way of being. And I'd recommend them to anybody, even just as a documentary. If you're not into the lifting, if you're not into training, just go watch the documentaries. They're just incredible,
Well, so typically I talk about this offline or whatever, but because I'm right now I'm just infatuated with what you're saying. I really am. I'm like, oh, this is incredible for more reasons than just the fact that it's a really radical and awesome feat of strength for a human to showcase, but for all of the deep cultural and even
Oh, amazing.
mythological and legendary reasons, as well as historical and cultural, all this stuff, right? I'm wondering if you would like to type some of this out, like
Hmm.
because I would love to, because typically we'll showcase like an article, and what I'll do is I'll take the bio, right, that we typically get, and then maybe I'll expand on it and maybe talk a little bit about what we talked about in the podcast or whatever.
Yeah,
But I think it would be incredible, and I'm hoping that I don't know if you're trying to make some sort of business model out of this or anything like that, or teach people this stuff on a side, like you're doing with the kettlebell yoga stuff. But I think it would be a rad presentation to have the interview
sure.
go along with, a little bit of a deeper dive into what is stone lifting, because it,
Yeah, man. I mean, I've actually written something about this already for a stone lifting magazine. There's magazines on everything, isn't there?
wow,
So
yeah,
I have that. I think still in my phone about my trip over to Scotland and about unearthing the culture in Ireland.
yeah.
So I'll send on as much as I can, and because the more people into it, I mean, there actually is a huge stone lifting society in America, in the US.
Oh,
The
really?
Utah Stones of Strength is a thing. There's some great ones going on all over the US. And there's some great ones going on all over the world, actually. It's very, very big in Hawaii and Tonga,
Mm-hmm.
as a form of strength training, or as a form, again, of manhood training, or manhood tests, excuse me, I should say. So
Yeah,
it's very deep, but it's starting to get unearthed. I mean, I'm seeing there's more and more people talking about this.
yeah,
It's becoming more prevalent all over the world. Scandinavia have a huge culture of it. I've met some great guys from kettlebell sport training and talking to them about these forms of, or tests of strength they had, like up north in the Arctic Circle, almost in Norway, and this was their so it's everywhere. It's
yeah,
everywhere, and it's starting to come out a bit more. So
yeah.
it's yeah, I'll definitely do that, man, 100%.
Oh, that would be incredible. I would love that, because the bio that I got is awesome. I'm like, oh, this is perfect, and I reviewed it, but I'm like, as you were talking, I'm like, I think that we should add more of this, because this is just, if not anything, it's intriguing. And I think the interesting part is, I think what it does is it tickles the, and I don't know if it's in our genetics or if it's instinctual or if it's a part of our brain and the development over time, but it tickles something that is a little bit more primitive. There's something there where it's like, man, I can see that there is worth here.
Oh man, it's the most ancient form of training. I mean, they were doing it like Cro-Magnon, man. I mean, you think all the way back.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as a gym. All you had was rocks
Yeah.
and and your imagination. And I mean, and like I said, it's so primal. It's so earthed. It's a great form of a strength test, because everybody knows that rock looks heavy. Can
Yeah.
I pick it up? If you
Yeah.
can, you're strong. If I can't, okay,
Yeah.
like, I'm going to train and try and do it again. It's everybody in the world knows what a stone is,
Yeah.
so everybody can get can. Sorry, I'm phoning
Oh,
there.
it's okay.
Everybody can know what it's worth, so that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. That's the same exact thing that I'll talk about with the battle ropes when I'm teaching the course. And I'll break down the wave physics and then be able to parallel that with mechanical physics and be like, look, you can quantify this too. So now this becomes a very usable tool, just like, any sort of progressive overload with weight or, whatever else. Once you understand how it works from a physics standpoint. But I'm like, but I will say it's not a shake weight. It's not a novelty item or whatever. It's not going anywhere, because just like stone lifting, you go back into history, you find archaeological digs with rope building tools back to
Awesome.
40,000, 60,000 years ago. And if those rope building tools that means ropes have been around with humans since we were able to create them. And so this thing isn't going anywhere. We're just finally discovering it on the fitness industry side, much like, the stones. It's like fitness industry is so
Exactly.
young, but stone lifting has been around since
Ancient.
humans, right?
Yeah, that's what I love about it, man. Like you said, you're in touch. You're actually in touch with history. So
Yeah,
that's the draw.
that's beautiful. I could imagine when you were talking about being, an artist and into music and all that stuff, and drinking and smoking or whatever. And I don't know if you were smoking. I just put that in there. But
Yeah, I was.
a flash of my mind just pictured David being Brad Pitt in Snatch, like you're drinking, smoking, and then you go lift this like super huge heavy stone, and then back to drinking and smoking, which I don't know if that's a reality or not. And we don't have to, you don't have to get super transparent on here, confess your sins or anything, but
I love the idea of that, all right.
Yeah, I was like, you could
pretty like a blue boss.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, this could be a movie. Yeah, so
it's a really interesting thing to start talking about, man. So it's great to finally have a chat to you about it, or chat to someone who's interested in it, because a lot of people kind of go, stone lifting, go away, you weirdo. Why aren't you going to the gym for? Well, I'm like, it's there, it's free. I train with stones up at the beach now. There's 3 or 4 of them out there. I just drive out there 3 or 4 times a week and just go lift rocks, go for a swim afterwards. That's my shower. And it's like, it's free and it's there. And why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. Well, and your body composition tells the story, right? Like we talked about this before the recording, but you have that photo of you deep in kettlebell sport, and then the photo of you now, which is deep in stone lifting. And it's like, well, you haven't got fat, right? You haven't gained a whole bunch of like fat weight, but you have gained a bunch of lean body mass. And from a basal metabolic rate standpoint and a basics fitness standpoint, like that's a pretty healthy composition.
It's awesome. I mean, strong legs, you got a strong back, you got strong grip, you got strong arms. It's such a full body movement. I mean, just lifting a stone to chest, you got a row, you got a deadlift, and you got a front squat. You know what I mean? Pretty much.
Yeah.
And you go row or pick up a rogue sandbag, 150 pounds, pick up one 200 pounds, pick up one 250 pounds, and tell me what you think of it. It's a similar movement. It'll kick your ass, So if you go out and just do maybe 15 to 20 lifts with a 115 kilo rock like I'm doing, and that's my training. And believe me, you won't be able to do much more after it. But talk about a full body workout. I mean, from your calves like up to your shoulders, you're working absolutely everything. Front and back. Yeah. That's why I love it. It hits absolutely everything, and you are just, the next day you're absolutely tired. So next day I get up and do my mobility work in the morning. I do 40 minutes mobility as I just check my body, what needs a bit of work on that. So I do strength day, mobility day, and I've been doing that now for years, and it seems to be working okay.
Beautiful. So the body movement specialists that are watching this will probably be like, well, what about push?
Push. Oh yeah, I mean, like I'll also do, like I do kettlebells, like say twice a week. So I do kettlebells. I do 100 push-ups every morning, at least 100 push-ups every morning, along with rows. So there's a lot of I do a lot of different stuff. I am concentrating on stone lifting, but I do a hell of a lot of yoga. I do a hell of a lot of bodyweight stuff as well, and a hell of a lot of kettlebells. I train guys twice a week on bells. So I'm pretty much training like every day, bar maybe a Sunday.
Yeah.
But because I may be working on my mobility every second day, touch wood, I haven't got an injury ever, so because I can stack my joints a bit more correctly over and underweight. So
well, I'll tell you what, I guarantee that mobility every other day is probably a pretty good little prophylactic medication for keeping yourself from being injured, right?
It's like, you're oiling the engine, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And so I will also say, you saying all this. So I've created this rite of passage, 12-year-old rite of passage for my kids, and then a 16-year-old, and then
nice.
Get out of my house rite of passage, right? But with that, I'm like, I think Jack and my daughters have their work cut out for them, because I think I'm going to add a stone lift into that. I think I have to.
Your kids are going to hate me, you know that.
Yeah, well, it's okay. I'll just point the finger, like blame him. No,
I'm going to get hate mail from your children now. Thanks.
Well, I mean, and I will say they do have, there is a highly physical component to their rite of passage.
Nice.
But there is also a highly mental and cognitive component too. And I, like, I think if a man, any human really, man or woman, if you can't build a fire, without, having to flip a switch or whatever, if you can't build a
Mm-hmm.
shelter, it's like, these things, we may not need them, but it does build a strange amount of confidence in our
Huge,
abilities, right? And as I
huge.
would think lifting a stone would too.
Huge, and it's something that I've said to my boys, and I've also said it to my daughter. I have stones here, and I said, "Look, I'm going to call you a man when you can lift that,"
Mm,
And the stone at the back is 70 kilos. And I'm like, once you can lift that 70-kilo stone up to your chest, I'm going to call you a man. Until then, you're not.
mm,
So they know that now, and they're training for it.
yeah,
And they're he was never really active that far, especially my older guy was never really that active. But
uh-huh.
now he's starting to get some training in because he knows that's what it takes.
That's what it
So
takes.
and like I said, that's a good thing. That's a good motivation. They give
Yeah,
kids motivation to get a little bit stronger.
yeah,
Because unfortunately, everybody's on devices more so than we ever were growing up because they weren't available.
yeah.
So there's a lot of really bad posture going on. There's a lot of weakness going out there. So I mean, it's great to kind of give a little bit of strength back, to the world, I think, and need that as a legacy.
100%. Well, and I do appreciate the devices in that I could have a conversation with you, clear around
Yeah,
the
man, 100%.
world. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's sucking us in and seeing us out, and yeah, it's not good
Yeah.
at all. Man, I think that's a perfect place to finish the show, because
Okay.
we went, your story, and then into stones, out of stones, kettlebell, but then we finished on family, which is obviously, it sounds to me, from my perspective at least, very important for you, very important for me, but
Huge.
then more so like
Huge.
just humanity, right? Family and humanity. Like, hey, we don't have to judge the entire world based on stone lifting, but this could
Not at
be a
all.
very important way to, you know, gain some confidence, gain some ability, and transition from boyhood to manhood, and you're actually, pursuing something. But the way we finish the show is we ask all of our guests, and we've had all sorts of different weird and good answers, but very different and eclectic answers on what is living fit. And so, David Keohan, I would ask, what is living fit to
Living
you?
fit. Well, living fit for me it's after giving me a second bite of the cherry, really, because before I was fit, I was going down a very bad road mentally and physically.
Mm,
And living fit and becoming fit has literally given me the world because I've traveled the world. I'm here for my kids and I'm unearthing history. So it's literally given me the world. So
mm.
that's what it means to me.
Man, I love it. You were right. It was short, but it was sweet, and it was really, really good. Mic drop, and we are done. Thank you so much, David, for hopping on the show. I really appreciate you giving us
Aaron, I
your
could
time.
talk to you all day, man. That was great. I really enjoyed it. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, for more interviews like that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking for not only those interviews, but follow along programs, exercise breakdowns, workouts, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for your fitness results, make sure you hop on to Living.Fit, become a member today, and I'll see you on the next one.